Tired of your car insurance rate going up, even with a clean driving record? You're not alone. That's why there's Jerry, your proactive insurance assistant. Jerry compares rates side by side from over 50 top insurers and helps you switch with ease. Jerry even tracks market rates and alerts you when it's best to shop. No spam calls, no hidden fees. Drivers who save with Jerry could save over $1,300 a year. Switch with confidence. Download the Jerry app or visit jerry.ai/Libsyn today. That's JERRY.ai/LIBSYN.
Hey listeners, this is Peter and welcome back to the History Shorts. Today's episode is brought to you by the Podcast Republic, your ultimate listening app. Discover and subscribe to thousands of podcasts from around the world. Download Podcast Republic today, available on Google Play and the Apple App Store. Today on History Shorts. On April 23, 1910, Theodore Roosevelt stood before an audience in Paris and delivered a speech that most of his listeners found interesting, but not especially remarkable. One passage from that speech has since been quoted by every American president, carved into walls, printed on motivational posters, read aloud at funerals and graduations, and locked rooms across the world for more than a century. And it goes like this. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. Most people who know these words have no idea where they actually came from, or why Roosevelt ever said them, or what was happening in his life when he did. Our history brief today covers some recent history news. A quick word from our sponsors.
Protect your pet with insurance from Pets Best. Plans start from less than $1 a day. Visit petsbest.com. Pet insurance products offered and administered by Pets Best Insurance Services, LLC, are underwritten by American Pet Insurance Company or Independence American Insurance Company. For terms and conditions, visit www.petsbest.com/policy. Products are underwritten by American Pet Insurance Company, Independence American Insurance Company, or MS Transverse Insurance Company, and administered by Pets Best Insurance Services, LLC. $1 a day premium based on 2024 average new policyholder data for accident and illness plans, pets age 0 to 10.
This day in history. On June 16, 1903, the Ford Motor Company was incorporated by Henry Ford and a small group of investors. The company would revolutionize manufacturing and transform the automobile from a luxury item into an everyday necessity. On June 16, 1976, thousands of black students in South Africa protested apartheid education policies. Police opened fire on demonstrators, killing and wounding many. The Soweto uprising became a turning point in the struggle against apartheid. Story of the day. Theodore Roosevelt left the presidency on March 4, 1909. He was 50 years old. He was, by any measure, one of the most accomplished men in America. Former Rough Rider, former governor of New York, former president of the United States, Nobel Peace Prize winner, conservationist, author of dozens of books, a man who had reshaped the American presidency and the American landscape in ways that would endure for generations. He was also, by his own account, deeply restless. He had promised not to seek a third term and intended to keep that promise. He had handpicked his successor, William Howard Taft, and genuinely believed that Taft would continue the progressive agenda that he had built over 7 years in the White House. He was, however, wrong about that. But he did not yet know how wrong. In March of 1909, the day after leaving office, Roosevelt departed for Africa on a hunting and scientific expedition sponsored by the Smithsonian Institution. He would be gone for over a year. He traveled through Kenya, Uganda, and the Congo, collecting specimens for the Smithsonian and writing dispatches that were published in Scribner's magazine to an enormous readership back home. By any external measure, it was the adventure of a lifetime. Internally, the picture was more complicated. Letters from friends and allies in Washington were reaching him in the African bush, and what they told him was troubling. Taft was dismantling the progressive coalition that Roosevelt had assembled. Conservation policies Roosevelt had fought for were being reversed. Political allies were being pushed aside. The legacy Roosevelt had spent 7 years building was being quietly taken apart by the man he had chosen to protect it. Roosevelt read through those letters in his tent, in the African heat, with a growing frustration that he could not yet act on and could not entirely suppress. After Africa, Roosevelt traveled through Europe, meeting kings and emperors, receiving honorary degrees, delivering lectures. He was received everywhere as a figure of world historical stature. And everywhere he went, he was also observed, analyzed, criticized by journalists, by political rivals, by European commentators who had their own views about American democracy and American ambition and the particular phenomenon of Theodore Roosevelt. The criticism was not always fair. Some of it was the reflexive dismissal of a man who had actually done things by people who had not. Some of it was the carping of political opponents who had never risked anything in the arena of public life, but who were perfectly confident in their assessments of those who had. Roosevelt had heard this kind of criticism his entire life. He had heard it as a young assemblyman in New York City, as a rancher in the Badlands, as a cavalry officer at San Juan Hill, as a president who made enemies with almost every significant decision he took. By April of 1910, standing in Paris about to address scholars and students, he had something to say about this. The speech was officially titled Citizenship in a Republic. It was long, as Roosevelt's speeches tended to be, and covered a wide range of themes about democracy, civic responsibility, and the obligations of the educated class to participate actively in public life, rather than observe it from a comfortable distance. The Man in the Arena passage was not delivered as a standalone moment. It was embedded in a larger argument about the difference between those who act and those who merely comment. Roosevelt was not speaking abstractly, he was speaking from experience. He was speaking in some sense about himself, about what it had meant to spend his life in the arena of public action, taking the blows, making the mistakes, bearing the criticism of people who had never risked what he had risked. He was also almost certainly speaking about what was coming, because Roosevelt knew by April 1910 that he was going to have to re enter the arena, that Taft's presidency had drifted too far from the progressive agenda to be corrected from the outside, that he was going to have to do the thing he had promised not to do, and that was seek the presidency again. He would challenge Taft for the Republican nomination in 1912. He would lose it. In the process, he believed was stolen from him. He would run anyway, on the Progressive Party ticket. He would be shot in the chest while delivering a campaign speech in Milwaukee, and would finish the speech before going to the hospital. He would lose the 1912 election to Woodrow Wilson. He would never be president again. And he knew none of this specifically on April 23rd, 1910. But he knew the arena, and he knew the cost of entering it. The Man in the Arena passage outlived the speech it came from, the political battles that surrounded it, and the man who delivered it. It has been quoted by John F. Kennedy, by Richard Nixon, by Barack Obama, by Bernie Brown, by athletes and soldiers and executives and anyone who has ever had to act under scrutiny and bear the judgment of those who did not. It endures because it names something true, that the risk of action, the possibility of failure, of criticism, of coming short, is not a reason to step back from the arena. It is the price of being in it. And that the credit, whatever credit history eventually assigns, belongs to the person who stepped in anyway. Roosevelt stepped in. His face was marred by dust and sweat and blood. He failed more than once. He dared greatly, however, every time. The History Brief. Today, on some history news, we're heading to Barcelona, Spain, where archaeologists opened a series of 14th century tombs expecting to confirm history. Instead, they discovered that history had gotten several of the burials completely wrong. According to reporting from Smithsonian Magazine, researchers studying the Royal Monastery of Santa Maria de Pedralbes recently identified the remains of Queen Elisenda of Montcada, one of the most influential women in medieval Catalonia. But while confirming the Queen's identity, they also uncovered a series of surprising mysteries involving misplaced skeletons, unexplained violence, and graves that contained entirely different people than historians expected. The monastery itself was founded in 1327 by Queen Elisenda, the wife of King James II of Aragon. After her husband's death, she spent the remainder of her life living beside the monastery she had herself established, eventually dying around 1364 at roughly 70 years old. As part of preparations for the monastery's 700th anniversary, researchers conducted the first comprehensive archaeological study of 8 of its oldest tombs. What they found was far more complicated than anyone anticipated. Instead of 8 expected burials, archaeologists uncovered the remains of 25 individuals. Some tombs contain multiple skeletons. Others contain people who clearly did not belong there, according to historical records. One of the biggest successes was the identification of Queen Elisenda herself. Researchers found her buried in a simple monastic habit, reflecting her life as a religious widow, but also discovered traces of gold and broiled silk, rosemary, and myrtle, symbols of both royal status and spiritual devotion. Analysts' analysis of her skeleton even revealed signs of osteoarthritis, consistent with someone who lived into old age. But the real surprises were elsewhere. A tomb believed to belong to a famous medieval knight contained no knight at all. Instead, archaeologists found the remains of 2 adult women and 3 infants. One woman even still had traces of ponytail preserved. Another grave, thought to belong to an abbess, contained the remains of 9 different people, including 4 men whose skulls showed evidence of stab wounds. Nearby, the monastery's first abbess appeared to have suffered a serious facial injury, possibly inflicted around the time of her death. What happened to these people? Well, that remains unknown. Were they victims of violence, political unrest, personal disputes? Historians simply don't know yet. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today and helping make this little show such a mighty success. If you're enjoying this show and would like to help with its production, you can always donate a few dollars at buymeacoffee.com or become a Patreon member to enjoy these episodes ad-free. Both of those links can be found on our website at www.historyshortspodcast.com. Make sure you guys look for us on YouTube, where we have different videos and series that are not part of this main feed. Have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you all again tomorrow.